New Mexico, where the desert sun scorches by day and the skies stretch wide and cold by night. In Albuquerque, the heat doesn't always come in waves, but it lingers. It's dry, piercing, and relentless. Even the pavement gets hot enough to sear bare skin. When the sun drops, the temperature often falls fast. Tourists may call it part of the Southwest's rugged charm, but for those without shelter, it's something far more brutal. There's no escape from the blazing summers or the bone-chilling winters. Life outdoors becomes a slow, punishing test of endurance. Lips crack, skin dries, water disappears quicker than you expect, and when shelters are either overcrowded or miles away, people settle wherever they can, under overpasses in tents or tucked behind forgotten buildings. In Albuquerque, the desert doesn't shout. It wears you down quietly day by day until your body breaks before your hope does.
What made you get back in it?
I came here,
Just Albuquerque?
Albuquerque, and the shit that I've been put through here.
Oh, what's the main thing you think that will help you right now?
Leaving here.
Just leaving, for starters?
Yeah, but it's
Being
not
around positive people?
It's not that easy. When you're addicted and you get sick, you get way sicker than heroin.
The current state of homelessness in Albuquerque. Homelessness in Albuquerque has become a deeply alarming issue, and is growing more visible with each passing year. Take a walk through the city, and you won't need to look hard. You'll pass tents tucked under highway overpasses, people curled up on sidewalks, and others wandering the streets with no destination and no safe place to rest. This isn't a hidden crisis anymore. It's playing out in plain view every day. In 2024, the city reported over 2,700 homeless individuals. Of those, more than 1 in 200 were living completely unsheltered outdoors, exposed to the elements. That's a staggering figure for a city of Albuquerque's size. It reflects how widespread the struggle has become for those with no roof, no protection, and often no support. But even these numbers may not capture the full picture. Many homeless in America, especially in cities like Albuquerque, go uncounted, moving frequently, avoiding detection, or simply falling through bureaucratic cracks. Local hospitals and emergency shelters are seeing far more people than official tallies suggest.
Like, you know, babe, like, to be honest, like, I'm not over there killing people. I'm not molesting children. I'm not doing things that would hurt innocent people. You know, Albuquerque is not a bad place. You know what I'm saying? But if you really, really want to help somebody who's in need, like, you know, just bullshit aside, emergency time is now, because I could really use the help, right? I'm gonna die.
Most shelters are at capacity nearly every night. People wait in long lines just to get a bed, and many leave disappointed, turning instead to sidewalks and alleyways to sleep. As for transitional housing, the kind meant to help people rebuild their lives, it's in critically short supply. In this environment, building stability becomes nearly impossible. There's nothing solid for people to hold on to. And this isn't only about housing, it's about health, it's about dignity, it's about basic human survival. Many living outside are elderly, disabled, or coping with untreated mental illness. Some once had careers, homes, and families. Now, they're trapped in a slow-moving system that fails to meet urgent needs. Albuquerque isn't facing a temporary surge, it's facing a slow unraveling. And the weight of it all is getting harder to bear. If the city continues on this path, it may reach a breaking point. This crisis is real, accelerating fast and damaging lives every single day.
I lost my house after I had my second baby, because I had a spot, you know, I had a spot and a job and everything, but when I had my second baby, he was in the ICU, so like, I was working up until I had him, and then my landlord was selling the house I was staying in, and then
how housing issues fuel homelessness in Albuquerque. When we talk about the growing crisis of the homeless in America, housing affordability remains at the center of the discussion. In Albuquerque, this connection is especially visible and deeply troubling. As rent prices climb and housing availability shrinks, more and more residents are being forced into homelessness. It's not a distant issue anymore. It's right here, affecting families, neighbors, and communities. As of mid-2025, the median rent in Albuquerque for all housing types hovers around $1.289 per month. That's about 26% lower than the national average, which might sound like a relief at first glance. However, this seemingly lower cost doesn't ease the burden for many low-income individuals and families. Nearly half of all renters in Albuquerque are considered cost-burdened, meaning over 30% of their income goes directly to rent. Isn't that staggering? 1 out of every 2 renters is barely hanging on just to afford a roof over their heads. What's more, rents keep rising. In just the first 6 months of 2024, the average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment jumped by 4%, and 2-bedroom units weren't far behind with a 2.5% increase. So even though Albuquerque may be more affordable than cities like San Francisco or New York, the consistent rent hikes still hit hard, especially when wages remain stagnant. Over time, those extra dollars each month make a big difference for struggling households. Meanwhile, the shortage of affordable units is severe. New Mexico is currently short by roughly 38,000 rental homes that would be considered affordable for extremely low-income renters. As a result, countless individuals are left waiting sometimes for years for housing that never comes. While shelters and temporary housing exist, they are often stretched to capacity. That leaves people with no real options even if they're working full-time. Many are employed but still homeless. If you're earning minimum wage and spending half your paycheck on rent, how long can you hold on before an eviction notice appears? It's devastating, and above all, it's unjust. Without serious efforts to expand housing supply or implement rent control and affordability programs, Albuquerque will remain a painful chapter in the story of the homeless in America. This crisis won't fade quietly. Housing isn't a side issue, it's the very core of it all. And until we act, that core will continue to collapse beneath the weight of our inaction. Fentanyl, meth abuse, and addiction. Has substance abuse quietly become one of the strongest forces driving the rise of homeless in America? In Albuquerque, the answer is increasingly clear. Addiction is not just a consequence of homelessness, it is often a root cause, one that magnifies the suffering of those already at the margins of society. A large number of unhoused individuals struggle daily with drug and alcohol use. On a national scale, around 1/3 of all people experiencing homelessness live with substance use disorders. Of those, the majority, nearly 2/3, have been dealing with addiction for years, if not decades. Locally, the problem is most visible in Albuquerque's International District, often grimly referred to as the war zone. On its streets, fentanyl, meth, heroin, and cocaine are disturbingly common even in daylight. The scale of this crisis is devastating. Since 2022, nearly 65% of overdose deaths in New Mexico have involved fentanyl, an opioid so potent that even a tiny dose can kill. That statistic alone speaks volumes about the danger and urgency of this epidemic. But what leads so many down this path? For many on the streets, substance use begins as a coping mechanism. They turn to drugs to escape chronic pain, mental illness, or emotional trauma. Yet instead of escape, they find themselves trapped in a cycle of dependency that's incredibly difficult to break. In my view, addiction here is not a choice, it is a tragedy. It's a symptom of larger failures and a signal that someone has been left behind. Currently, Albuquerque offers roughly 800 recovery housing beds spread across 18 providers. At first glance, that sounds promising, but when compared to the thousands who need help, it's nowhere near enough. How do we expect someone battling opioid addiction and sleeping on the sidewalk to hold a job or search for housing? It's an almost impossible task. Addiction clouds judgment, increases vulnerability, and complicates every effort to escape homelessness. Still, when people are given secure housing and access to treatment, studies show that recovery becomes far more likely. Programs like Housing First have proven this over and over again, yet the reality remains that only about 1 in 3 New Mexicans struggling with addiction receives any form of treatment through Medicaid or similar programs. That's not just a gap, it's a crisis. We must stop viewing addiction as a personal failing. It is a public health emergency. To truly address homeless in America, we need to expand recovery housing increase, access to overdose reversal tools like Narcan, invest in mental health care, and educate the public to reduce stigma. Because ultimately, addiction doesn't just steal homes, it steals lives. And unless we act with compassion and urgency, the Homeless in America crisis will continue to spiral. The job crisis behind the tents. Let's be honest. Whenever the topic of people living on the streets comes up, someone always asks, why don't they just get a job? It feels like a straightforward solution. But in a city like Albuquerque, the reality is far more complicated. Finding a job isn't as easy as it sounds. Yes, you might see now hiring signs in shop windows or fast food restaurants, but most of those positions are part-time pay minimum wage and don't include any kind of benefits. Even when someone manages to get hired, that paycheck often isn't enough to cover rent, groceries, and bus fare, especially in a city where rent prices seem to rise every single year. Many people assume that as long as you're physically able, you should be working. But what happens if you don't have a valid ID? Or what if you don't have clean clothes to wear to an interview? What if you don't have a phone for callbacks? What if you're struggling with mental illness or trying to recover from addiction? These aren't rare cases, they're everyday barriers for people without homes, and they make finding and keeping a job nearly impossible. We also have to consider the job market itself. Albuquerque has consistently had one of the highest unemployment rates in New Mexico. Many local jobs are in food service, hospitality, construction, or agriculture industries that often collapse quickly during economic downturns. And after COVID hit, let's face it, many of those jobs either disappeared or returned in a reduced form with fewer hours and less stability. And even when someone is sober, eager to work, and ready to show up on time, many employers still hesitate to hire them if they don't have a permanent address. It's discrimination, plain and simple, but it's also how the system currently functions. There's another factor that often goes unspoken: trauma. Living on the streets for years takes a toll on your mind, your body, and your spirit. The stress of daily survival affects everything in your ability to concentrate, to sleep, even to feel safe. So, how does someone wake up after a cold night on a bench and head straight to a job with a smile on their face? This issue isn't just about employment, it's about dignity. It's about restoring trust, rebuilding confidence, and offering real chances. Until we address the deeper cracks in the system, not just fill the job listings, we'll keep watching more people fall through the gaps. So the next time someone says, "Why don't they just work?" maybe we should be asking, what are we doing to make work truly accessible? Because behind every stereotype about laziness is often the story of a person who tried but was denied again and again. This is yet another layer of the worsening crisis of homeless in America, a country full of people who want to work but are blocked by a system that keeps failing them. Social welfare and homelessness in Albuquerque. Albuquerque's safety net for those experiencing homelessness is both far-reaching and overwhelmed. On one side, the city has built a layered system involving nonprofits, municipal agencies, and state-funded initiatives, all working to address the needs of vulnerable populations. On the other, the demand for help continues to outstrip the available resources, leaving many without the assistance they desperately need. At the core of the city's approach is the Coordinated Entry System. This centralized platform aims to streamline access to services by ranking individuals based on urgency through tools like the VSBAT assessment. In principle, it ensures that those with the highest need receive help first. But in practice, with roughly 5,600 households experiencing homelessness each year in Albuquerque, the system struggles to keep pace. Many end up stuck on waiting lists, bounced between programs, or falling through the cracks entirely. When it comes to healthcare, Albuquerque stands out. The nonprofit Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless runs a specialized campus and deploys outreach teams to provide medical support directly to the streets. Still, on the night of January 29, 2024, just over half of those living without shelter had received any form of care. That means the other half are battling serious physical and mental health issues without steady access to treatment. Across the state hospitals saw about 30 and 182 unique patients facing housing instability between 2019 and 2023, averaging 6 visits per person. Clearly, many are reaching out, but often only when a crisis hits, not through preventive or continuous care. Emergency shelters and recovery housing serve as critical support pillars. Faith-based organizations such as Joy Junction deliver meals, shelter, and counseling to around 300 individuals every day. Meanwhile, the city provides approximately 800 recovery housing beds through 18 different providers. While significant, these numbers still fall short compared to the hundreds more in urgent need and thousands living in unstable environments. Financially, Albuquerque has shown commitment. Over $10.7 million is allocated yearly through federal Continuum of Care grants to fund emergency shelters, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and wraparound services. In addition, a $14 million bond backed by voters was set aside to expand shelter capacity, reflecting strong local support for solutions. Nevertheless, shelters often reach full capacity and many individuals are turned away each night. So, is this network of services truly enough? The answer, unfortunately, is no. Major gaps remain in mental health care addiction, recovery, workforce training, and especially in access to long-term stable housing. The Albuquerque Community Safety ACS program does send unarmed teams to respond to nonviolent crises, yet it doesn't resolve deeper issues like housing unaffordability or the lack of structured long-term care. Government responses and policies. The city of Albuquerque has taken noticeable steps to tackle homelessness through a combination of immediate relief measures and long-term strategies. Yet despite these efforts, the magnitude of the crisis continues to outpace the city's response. One of the most innovative moves has been the launch of the Albuquerque Community Safety ACS Department. Instead of relying on police officers to handle nonviolent incidents involving mental health addiction, or homelessness-trained civilian professionals now respond to those calls. This approach is not only more humane, it's also more effective, easing the pressure on law enforcement and providing better supports for vulnerable people. On the shelter front, city leaders have approved funding for new facilities, including the expansive Gateway Center. This facility is designed to offer emergency shelter medical sobering services and assistance with finding housing. The vision behind the project is encouraging, but progress has been slow. Construction delays and public criticism have made it clear that the response hasn't moved fast enough to meet urgent needs. Meanwhile, existing shelters in Albuquerque continue to reach full capacity almost every night. In addition, the city is working on zoning reforms aimed at boosting affordable housing construction. The Housing Forward ABQ initiative seeks to add thousands of new housing units by streamlining regulations and offering development incentives. These actions are meaningful, but when measured against the rapid growth of homelessness, they still fall short. Local officials clearly understand the crisis, but their ability to act is limited by funding challenges, political constraints, and the complex nature of the issue itself. If Albuquerque truly wants to make a long-term difference, it will need to expand its efforts, focus on permanent supportive housing, and form stronger partnerships with state and federal agencies. Otherwise, the city risks falling into a cycle of short-term patches that never lead to real solutions. How residents are affected by homelessness. Living in Albuquerque today, it's nearly impossible to ignore how deeply homelessness has impacted the community. Some residents feel sorrow or helplessness when they pass people sleeping on sidewalks. Others, especially small business owners or parents, express concern about safety around schools, parks, and storefronts. Honestly, both reactions are understandable. No one wants to navigate around tents just to get to work, but it's equally true that no one willingly chooses to live in a tent unless they've run out of choices. Still, the presence of visible encampments has stirred tension. People worry about rising crime trash buildup and open drug use. Some neighborhoods simply don't feel the same as they did just a few years ago. But here's the truth, we won't fix this by just cleaning it up. Relocating people from one area to another doesn't solve the problem, it just moves it around. If we reduce this issue to an inconvenience, we lose sight of the human beings behind it. Most people in Albuquerque, I believe, genuinely want to help. At the same time, they also want to feel safe in their neighborhoods. Striking that balance is not easy, but unless the city focuses more deeply on the root causes of homelessness in America, we're all just going in circles with no real way forward. Conclusion. Homelessness in Albuquerque isn't just a matter of policy, it reveals deeper cracks in the foundation of American society. Soaring housing prices, untreated substance use gaps in mental health care, and shrinking social safety nets all collide to fuel a crisis far too complex for any single institution to fix on its own. What's unfolding in this city is just one chapter in the broader story of homeless in America, and it reminds us how quickly someone can slip through the system with no way back. Yet this crisis is not without hope. With real compassion, bold leadership, and united community efforts, meaningful change is within reach. Investing in permanent housing, expanding access to healthcare, and offering consistent job support could transform thousands of lives. The real question is, are we content to keep managing the symptoms, or are we ready to solve the problem at its root? That choice will not only shape Albuquerque's future, it could redefine how we confront the challenge of homeless in America going forward.